All right, cool. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you to the team for inviting me back. So I want to speak to you guys about a human approach to interaction design. So naturally, in my field of work as an entrepreneur, but more importantly as a motion designer, I've constantly had to observe for better design. So what I mean by that is, especially within animation, we tend to mimic what happens in the real world. So I'm constantly observing nature, physics, all of these things which would inform my design in a more powerful way. And through this, it's helped me to understand that everything from micro interactions to the macro interactions all come together in a perfect way to form this story and this experience that we call life. So with that being said, today I'm not just going to be speaking to you guys as a motion designer, but I want to speak to you guys as a simple human being. So what do I mean? And what makes us human? Now, this question in and of itself is quite debatable because it's quite a huge question to answer. So I don't intend to fully answer it within 20 minutes. But I don't believe it comes down to our five senses. It's not about our sight, it's not about taste, our ability to smell or touch or hear, because we share these senses with other species on the planet. So what genuinely makes us human beings? I believe that partly it comes down to our feelings and emotions. Now, I'm not saying that this is something that is exclusive to human beings as a species, because I don't believe it is. But I think something that makes us unique is our ability to perceive and articulate emotions felt in ourselves and others. And that is genuinely what I believe makes us unique as human beings, because we are conscious beings. We are people that we can identify in ourselves and we can identify in others. And it's this particular quality which I believe that once we tap into it more, it can shape the way how we move forward. So does our design and technology currently reflect our feelings and emotions? Again, this is a huge question because design and technology in and of itself is such a huge genre. And it's not something which, again, I'm going to try and answer within 20 minutes, but it is something which I want you guys to go away and really kind of ask yourself when you're interacting with your day-to-day technology and the designs that are around it. Does it reflect you? Does it reflect your emotions? How does it actually make you feel? And then the next question, something which I think reflects this quite well, is social media. But I'll come on to that in a bit more detail. Before I actually go on to that, though, I'm going to focus a bit more on what we're all here for today, which is the smartphone and apps. Because smartphone is something now which is an extension of us as human beings. It's in everything that we do. We've learned that from the other talks that have been here today. It's in our finances, in our health, in our social, in our love life. Everything that we do now is tapped into a mobile phone and an application. So that means that this phone is now the extension, and it is the intermediate device which is between us as human beings and our physical world around us. And I don't know how that makes you guys feel, but for me, sometimes it makes me feel slightly uneasy, because we are now putting all of our trust, all of our emotions, everything, our whole identity into a man-made digital device. So that is why it's very, very important that we take this into real consideration and really ask ourselves, if this is something that we're going to be using, or any other technology for that matter, how we're going to humanize it more, how we're going to make it more about us. And as I was going to say, social media is something which I think reflects this in some ways. So why do you guys go onto social media? Is it to connect with your friends? Is it to connect with your family? Maybe to share pictures of your dog or your holiday? I don't believe it's down to that. For me, I believe social media is about validation. We share stuff because we want these things. We want the likes, the thumbs up, the friend requests. All of these things is something which gives us validation as a human being. It tells us something about who we are, because we're all unique, we're all individuals, but we're all trying to seek, in this noisy world that we're in this digital space, we're all trying to seek a unique way to try and express ourselves. So I genuinely believe that this is why we go on there. And when we do receive the likes, the friend requests and the comments, it's not just about the validation, but it's about the chemical release that happens in our bodies, psychologically, emotionally for us, that changes everything. And it's the endorphins that are released. Once those endorphins are released, this now becomes an addictive activity for us. That's why all of us, we're so addicted to social media, because of the fact that we get this feeling, it feels so good, and we want more of it constantly. So we have to understand, if we understand the psychology behind this, it can better inform us in terms of how we're going to move forward with our own businesses, with our own designs, not necessarily to create the same effect, but to make technology maybe a bit more responsibly. So do you empathize with your user? Empathy is something which I think is very important. And like I spoke about with social media, the question is, how do your users feel when they're going to come onto your app? So for the social media example, it's something where we might feel like we need a bit more of those endorphins, so that's why we go on there, and it fulfills that need. But what do they feel? And what do you want them to feel when they're interacting with your app? What kind of emotions do you want them to have? And I think that if we can tap into this and really try and answer this question, especially the first one of how they actually feel, then maybe we can build something, maybe we can design something which is more in tune with the human beings who are using our business, our service, and our apps on a day-to-day basis. So what does it look like to approach design from a human perspective? Again, this is such a huge subject, but I'm going to start by just tapping on some small examples here. So I'm going to start with color. Color is something which evokes emotions. Color is something which is culturally relevant, and it is embedded in our day-to-day lives because of the fact that everything that we're seeing here today, as you're seeing me and so forth, we see color. And we have identified with this in a psychological way, something that's good, something that's bad. It means everything to us. So it's important that something that is so embedded in our day-to-day life experience, surely we should try and understand what psychological effects it has on us. Now this, in and of itself, I'll look and skim through some ideas here. So deep oranges can create warmth, freedom, and optimism. And apologies if any of these translations on here are incorrect. I've tried. I've used Google Translate, so apologies if they don't come out the same way. So yeah, when summertime comes, I'm guessing here in Russia as well, I don't know about you, but when summertime comes in London, everything just looks better. You feel better. I feel amazing. I want to go out. I want to socialize more. It gives me this sense of optimism. It gives me that sense of warmth. Everything just feels great when everything is slightly tinted with this type of color to it. And then we have deep reds, which, again, depending on which territory in the world you're in, it can have different connotations, different meanings. It can mean good luck in some parts. It can mean bad luck in other parts. But it does evoke certain emotions of passion, Valentine's Day, excitement. And there are so many more things that these colors actually represent. And then we have purples, which can evoke compassion, creativity, or luxury. These are, again, just some very, very small ideas. And then blues. If you notice that a lot of corporate companies that take themselves quite seriously, they're very straight-laced about how they go about their business, sometimes they tend to use blues. Facebook. Let's have a look at Facebook for a second. Does Facebook want you to trust them? Do they want you to have confidence? I'm not sure. I'm just throwing ideas out there. But some corporate companies which might choose a color like this, it's because they want you to feel that level of trust. They want you to have that level of confidence in their service. So they're not going to go for something like a purple because you just simply might not take them seriously. But you won't be able to understand why, but you will just dismiss them. So all of these things are psychological and they're done in a deliberate way. And then we have greens. Again, depending on the different type and tone of green, it has different meanings. But it can mean prosperity, growth, clarity, which, on reflection, when I'm looking at it, maybe that is why MBLT is of this color this year. I don't know. I could be wrong, but perhaps, because we're all here to grow. We're all here for maybe a level of prosperity in our businesses and a bit of clarity about how we should go forward in mobile development and design. So if MBLT did do that, then it would make a lot of sense. And then we have things like sound and dialogue. So today we have a lot of things like Siri, Alexa, Google Assist. And this now is a different type of user interface because it is not a visual interface. It is a sound and dialogue. So with this, if we are going to make it human, it's important for us, again, to understand the type of conversational and dialogue that we have as human beings and how we can then place that into the technology that we have. So how can it be responsive? Can it have, different slang? Whether you're speaking English or Russian, there are different types of ways that you would speak that language. So how can we reflect that in a more organic way if this is something that we're going to be bringing into our apps into the future? Again, all of these things are just stuff for you to go away and think about today. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm providing solutions, but if we ask the right questions, then we can create the right future for our technology. And when we speak about languages, this to me now is the most commonly used language out there in the digital space. Emojis, we all understand it, and the reason why it's effective is because generationally, everybody understands it, from your grandmother to your kid niece or your daughter. Everybody understands what emojis is. It's because it is based on the oldest language in human history, which is just simply human expressions. That's all it is. There's nothing else to it here. We all get angry sometimes. We all feel sad, a bit of joy and surprise and laughter. We all share this because beyond anything else, instead of being Russian or me being English or black or white or any of that stuff, we're human beings first. So this is why something like this is so universal and is understood worldwide. But what if you can't have emojis in your app? If you're a type of app which is, again, if I'm saying a banking app or something like that, maybe you want to be taken a bit more seriously, and something like this simply isn't going to work for you. But there is other ways that we can display emotions and characteristics without having to put smiley faces on it. And the way that we can do that is through simple movements. So here what I've done, it's just a very, very basic idea here. And I've just basically shown how two squares are moving within a space. Now these squares are moving, believe it or not, at the same time. So they're going from A to B in 1 second, and then 1 second again, and then 1 second again. That's all they're doing. But we can see distinctively how they're moving quite differently. So of course I've put colors in there as well to try and give an idea, but because of the fact that they're moving differently, it creates a characteristic now. And this is simply through changing the velocity, changing the types of movement, and now we are providing characteristics to something very simple as 2D pixels on a screen. And how can we then embed that into a user interface? So this short example here is one which I think creates a level of urgency and excitement. So notice how the icon itself is snapping into the thumbnail very quickly, literally like that. Because of the fact of the velocity, it's going very, very sharp. But in order to be able to drive this message home, I want you guys to pay attention to how the menus are actually loading up onto the screen. Do you notice how it shudders a little bit? It doesn't just land there or appear softly. It has a direct force between it. And as I mentioned at the beginning about, as a motion designer, we have to sometimes observe real-world situations. This is about physicality. If I slam something on the ground, it's going to have a ripple effect. And this is exactly what's happening here. So this is giving a feeling now of something that's quite sharp and quite dynamic. But by contrast, if we wanted to do something slightly different, we might do something a bit more smooth like this. Now, if you had a premium brand of some kind, then this type of movement might be more sufficient for your use. It's not snapping between one thing to the other in a very sharp manner. It's doing it in a very gentle, elegant motion. And the way how I see motion design, the way how I see animation within user interfaces is like a dance. So if we imagine two dancers, one is a street dancer and one is a ballet dancer, they're both using the same body parts. But just by their movements, they're creating a completely different feeling, a completely different story that they're telling you just because of the way how they're moving, whether it's slow and gentle and fluid, or whether it's very sharp, very punchy, and very direct. Another example here of something that can be quite calm. Now, this concept here, you can see is quite fluid. It almost kind of mimics a lava lamp, if you guys are familiar with those from the 80s. So this, in and of itself, the user interface doesn't stick within a structure. It allows itself to be quite fluid like water. And notice that the movements is not being rushed at all. Everything is quite slow. Of course, if your users needed to do something very quickly, then this wouldn't be the way to do it. It would only frustrate them. But if you was in the business of some kind, maybe it was a meditation app or something like that, then perhaps this type of user interface movement would be more in tune with how you want your user to feel, which is a bit more calm, a bit more relaxed, and taking their time when interacting with your application. So every moment, every element within your app is an opportunity to tell a story, evoke an emotion, and resonate deeply with your users. Every single point, every single key point. And to me, some of the best designs in our world, not just in technology, but in our world in itself, are the ones that implement some of these ideas which I've presented to you in a way which is invisible, and you simply wouldn't even be able to pinpoint it out and articulate it. Maybe not even me, but somehow you just like it. In the way that people, loved certain devices of Apple before and their design because they couldn't understand why, but it was tapping into certain levels of psychology and their emotions to make them feel a certain way. So as I said previously, I believe that feelings are universal. So if you make your app more universal, you can make it universal by leading with your feelings first. We speak a lot about KPIs and we have a lot of data research, and I genuinely do believe that those things are valid and it is very important. But at the same time, if we lead with our feelings first and we place the importance on how we want the user to feel, then this is something that can change remarkably in terms of your business, but also the way and the scope and where we're going with technology in the future. Because I believe that the greatest power in technology is to make our humanity the forefront of anything and everything we do, and emotionally connecting us more. So once we get away from this idea of somebody's political beliefs, somebody's race or gender, or social status, and we simply bring it down to the baseline as human beings, and then start from there, then it can be something quite remarkable. So how can we go about that? For me, I believe that we can start by being more sensitive. I spoke about being observant at the beginning, but if we're sensitive to what it is that we're observing and really being true to ourselves, then maybe this can inform our design in a way which feels more authentic. And then we can be empathetic, because empathy is the one thing which can connect us all. It's something that we intrinsically understand, it's something that we intrinsically feel, and once I am more empathetic with you or with you, then it can connect us more in a far more deep and meaningful way. And then we have being intuitive. So once you've done the first two things in terms of being sensitive and you're being empathetic, then being intuitive will kind of come naturally to you. But being intuitive to me isn't just about understanding these two things, it's about being in tune with yourself first. So asking the right questions and getting a true understanding of who you are as a human being. What makes you tick up here, but more importantly, what makes you tick here? And once we can be in tune to what that is about, then we can be brave enough to start bringing that into our work, into our day-to-day design, into our business ventures in a far more meaningful way. So that leads me to my final point, and probably the most important, which ties all of this together, which is to simply be human. Once we understand all of these things, let's just be human beings about it, put that at the forefront of everything we do, and we can make fantastic things. If you guys want to learn more about motion design and how to implement that into your applications, or how to design with motion design, not just learning it from doing After Effects, but actually genuinely understanding the theory behind it, as I've spoke about here, then visit my website, where we're going to be doing a lot of tutorials and handing out a lot of resources to help you to bring that into your business in a far more meaningful way. So thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Romaine, first of all, thank you. Thanks a lot for this presentation. You've been really impressive and inspiring, personally, for me. So the question is, you're doing projects for international companies, right? And you've talked a lot about different people, different countries, different nations. How do you make sure that people from different countries perceive your ideas and read them correctly? Do you do any research? So how do you personally do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, it depends, for me personally, it depends on what level I'm involved in a project. Sometimes, unfortunately, I don't get that creative control in a way that I could do. But if it is a thing where, let's say that I do have that creative control, there will be market research involved, absolutely. So by no means am I discounting that. There was a fantastic talk earlier on by Matt 2 sections ago, and there was a lot of fantastic data in there. And I believe that if we use that kind of data to start with in terms of understanding the type of activities, then I think that's great. But generally speaking, especially from an animation perspective, I would lead from my human experience first. I would lead from the observations. Does it mimic a certain thing? And then we can go into user testing and seeing if the intended response is going to be there. But if I'm starting off just with the data and just trying to mimic what is already out there, then we can't push forward with something that could be groundbreaking. And I think that all of us here have the potential in some way to have an idea which can be truly groundbreaking. But I think that in order for it to be something that is sustainable and that can move us all forward, it's more important to start from that place first of how would it feel, asking about the feeling and being more holistic about it, and then looking at the data. And then trying to say, okay, this is what I've designed, this is what I've built based on ideas and group feedback, and this is the data, and this is how we're going to do user testing. And then once you kind of filter your way through, you kind of find what is kind of like the hitting point, but it might take a few iterations to kind of get there.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, one more question. You stressed out very well why we use social media and which emotions it provokes. But I'm interested which emotions can force customers to use financial services?
Fear. Fear.
Fear?
Yeah.
Wow.
If you look at somewhere like I'm not encouraging to do it that way. I don't think you should. But if you look at places like I don't want to try and be politically incorrect here about what I'm saying, but you watch the news. I'm not sure what the news is like here in Russia, but if you watch the news in a lot of other places, especially in America, it's fear-based. Because fear is something which creates an action within us more than anything else. If we feel that the financial markets are going to crash tomorrow, we're going to do something, as opposed to any single time where you think that you're in a position of losing something or something like that, it causes you to act in a certain way. But I don't think that that is sustainable for your business or for the growth. So I would say that from a holistic point of view, we need to try and start with more kind of trust and encouragement and optimism. So instead of thinking about fear, trying to bring something on the complete opposite, which is potential. So positive potential, as opposed to if you don't do this, this is going to happen. This is what can happen if you do this. And if we try and lead from that kind of position and tapping into understanding what the customers want when they're using the banking app, maybe it's security, maybe it's financial abundance or so forth, then maybe that way we can kind of tap into them in a slightly more better way, in a more sustainable way.
Okay, so it's like the insurance company, they don't make you like fear, but they make you to be sure about your future and so on.
Yeah, yeah. And if I was an insurance company selling to you, I would go about it in two ways. I would either say, if you don't insure yourself with me as a company, then this can happen, this can happen, this can happen, and you're not going to feel great about it. Or I would say to you that, just for this amount, here is the safety that you're going to get, just a peace of mind. So I can sell to you, instead of the fear, I'll sell to you the peace of mind so you can get on with your life. Go and enjoy your life, go and travel, go and do this, and I've got you covered because I'm going to look after you. So that's the two different ways that I would maybe approach it. One is a big hug and say, don't worry, I've got you covered. Or the other one is, if you don't do this now, everything's going to fall apart. So that's just me personally, and the two opposite ways that I would go about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you for your presentation. You had a slide with the colors and the emotions or actions, the slides beside them.
Yeah.
For me, as a person without any experience, how can I decide which color means what? Or it's come from your experience?
No, not at all. All of this stuff is available online. So if you type in color psychology into Google, you'll get so much information on the different colors. And some of it is debatable. Some people will say, no, that doesn't work. And like I say, something like a red in China, I think, represents good luck as opposed to somewhere else, which is quite bad. So again, it comes down to maybe the territory that you're trying to serve with your business and your service, but all of that stuff is online. Once you Google color psychology, everything will be on there for you to be able to do some research on.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you for your presentation. I would like to continue the discussion which the lady started. Let's imagine the situation when a user is on the start screen of an app. And we need to make him or her, feel confident, stable, protected. How would you do that if you are on just this one screen?
Okay. I would start with colors. So, you got to translate. So I would start with colors first, because it's very important. The quality and the build of your app. If your app glitches or it takes too long to load, especially at the beginning, it's not a good first impression. So it has to be responsive, has to be quite dynamic. So that's the two things that I would start with. I would start with something which breaks the ice. If I start a conversation with you, maybe it's a joke or maybe I'm trying to be funny or something, I would try to be quite maybe humorous about my approach. But if it's something that's quite serious like this, which is quite a serious type of business, then I would simply kind of keep it very business orientated. But again, just starting with the colors first, starting with the quality of the build, and maybe in some type of animations, as I demonstrated, the animations won't be something that is necessarily quite punchy and sharp because it might excite the user too much. I would do something which isn't too slow, but isn't too fast, but it's very measured and it's got a very controlled approach, which says to you as a user that I have everything under control because welcome to my page, welcome to my app, here is my logo, this is what we do, come inside and I'll show you more and just make it kind of easier from there. But it's the interconnections and it is the micro interactions that will kind of go in your psychology. So I would break it down on those kind of levels, but that is how I would start the process in terms of starting from there and trying to make it more calm, but still quite sleek and quite minimalistic, so it's not too much stuff on the screen that is going to jar the user or overexcite them if it's going to do that.